Howdy, my name is Mike Lopez, and I am an Extension Program Specialist with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service, based in College Station, Texas. I would like to welcome everyone watching virtually to this module for Master Health volunteers. And let me begin by thanking you for your dedication to serving others in health and nutrition. Your volunteer opportunities, regardless of the task, are imperative to expand our work and outreach to help people better their lives. A little bit about me. My major program efforts in our Family and Community Health Unit is to focus on human populations and the effect of the built environment on healthy living. I have been fortunate to work with numerous communities across the state and country to provide practice and evidence-based resources and technical assistance related to planning for active communities. In short, I help communities implement meaningful changes that celebrate local culture and foster the growth of grassroots ideas and visions related to physical activity. With that perspective in mind, in this module, I'm excited to discuss ways that we, as volunteers, can help to create social and physical environments in our communities that help to support a culture of wellness. As we go through the session, I encourage you to think on how we can incorporate some of these ideas and thoughts into the programs that you are potentially interested in. So with that, let's go ahead and begin. Our main outcome of today will be to brainstorm an action plan for you to apply these learning objectives into your volunteer experience. The resources and strategies that we will discuss can be applied to any setting and community regardless of size. In fact, whenever I mention community, always apply that to your context and how you define your community. Some examples could be your neighborhood association or your faith community. It could also be where you plan to serve as a volunteer, perhaps at a community resource like a community center, senior center, or library. Attached with this presentation is also a study guide. I will reference that guide throughout the session, but also mention it here to share that all the resources highlighted are cited at the end of that guide. Leaving this session, I want each of us to have feasible and tangible ideas for how we might be able to incorporate these topics into our volunteer efforts. We will accomplish this by identifying resources to create and enhance our environments to promote physical activity opportunities. We will also cover how to best utilize some of these resources. Finally, we will talk through some tips for getting communities on board with these topics, or in other words, how to promote and address some of the issues related to physical activity that might come up. Let's get our creative juices flowing with a thought question. While the theme of this module is creating a culture of wellness, my emphasis area is physical activity, so much of our discussion will be within that context. Don't worry if that is not your interest or content area that you would like to focus on. There will be common themes around healthy eating and the promotion of healthy living and wellness. To get started, I propose this question. If you could ask or learn only one thing about a person and from that had to guess or predict their level of physical activity, what would you ask? Take about 30 seconds to think on this and see what you come up with. Now there is a caveat. You cannot ask how many minutes of physical activity do you get directly or how active are you. So what did you come up with? Some examples that I usually hear are, what do you do in your free time? As you might expect, this is getting at leisure time habits and activities, with perhaps the hypothesis that more time spent engaging in sedentary activities offer less time towards physical activity. Another common question that I hear is, what is your occupation, or where do you work? This question is asking about occupational habits, and the hypothesis would be that the more active an individual's job is, perhaps the more active they are. Diet-related questions could also potentially translate to physical activity habits, but one of my favorite responses to this thought prompt must be, what are your favorite shoes? I asked for more information, and the person responded that a more athletic brand or style could mean that a person spends more time being active. All great questions, and there are no wrong answers to this activity. Myself, if I was asked to come up with only one question to predict physical activity levels, and this would apply to diet actually as well, I would ask, where do you live? By knowing an individual's residence, we could determine the resources available to that person. We could see descriptors like age, education levels, income, and other social and economic factors for that area. We could also identify the different environments that support that individual and may have an influence on behavior and their choices. Again, this is not only true for physical activity, but also for diet. You might have heard previously that your zip code matters more than your genetic code, and there is data and resources that support that statement. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation recently released a website that highlights life expectancy using the first of its kind neighborhood level data from the National Center for Health Statistics. This data shows that not everyone has the same opportunities to be healthy. Improving our community's health starts with changing the culture and perhaps addressing social norms around our health and behavior choices. We, as practitioners and volunteers, can truly make an impact and have the unique opportunity to educate and create awareness of places that are supportive of healthy lifestyles. The images on the screen reflect some of my environments. The left being my home address, and the right, about 10 miles away, being my office location. The two unique areas have over a 3-year difference in life expectancy. I am fortunate enough to be able to have transportation to engage in health and recreational services that I enjoy, but how about those who do not have the accessibility or availability of those resources? My formative years were spent in Western New York, and using the address where I grew up, there is nearly an 11-year difference in life expectancy. Take a few moments to complete the Slide 4 action task on the study guide and answer the accompanying questions. Let's do another thought exercise, more context specific, and for this, we will use the Slide 5 action task located in the study guide. In your community, where would you be active? What challenges would you face to achieve your physical activity goals? We will take about 30 seconds for this activity and write down some thoughts in the study guide box. Now that we have challenges identified to physical activity in our community, we could determine themes and think of some ways to address these real and perceived barriers that us and our community members might face. Challenges that come up when we do this exercise typically involve time or energy. In addition to those, often challenges related to our environments come up as well. Some examples include few places to be active, or those locations not being convenient or accessible at certain times. I live in a college community, and walking is very prevalent and a great way to meet physical activity recommendations, while also potentially getting to class on time. Often, though, the physical environment's infrastructure may not be supportive of walking, or we have other distractions that may affect the safety of our journeys. So let's discuss the environmental influences on physical activity. Why focus on the environment? Well, as we have discussed, our environments have a strong influence on our behavior and the extent to which targeted behaviors are adopted. So, what is considered when we think of environment? We probably think of the environment as the design and layout of a physical space. One example could be a certain location or room that has a specific arrangement with various materials available in that space. Or maybe we think of the natural environment, like air quality, weather, or outdoor open spaces. While the definition of environment includes those descriptions, it is also much more comprehensive than that. The environment consists of all the external conditions that may affect an individual and influence how we feel and what we do. This includes the informational environment, like mass media, along with our social and cultural environments, like safety, comfort, and the attractiveness of places that we engage in. Some of these are considered real barriers, while others could be our own perception of an environment. Let's look at the County Health Rankings model for our health outcomes. This infographic explores what attributes to mortality, i.e., the length of life, or morbidity, or in other words, our quality of life. The highest percentage of our overall health outcomes are attributed to social and environmental factors. Community safety is just one example of a potential challenge and could be both a real and a perceived barrier to someone who wants to be active, but does not have a safe place to go. Health behaviors, which constitute 30% to the overall impact of health outcomes, represent a prime target for improving national health and health care. Addressing these risk behaviors and lifestyle factors with an upstream environmental approach is an urgent national priority. In a recent face-to-face training, I asked volunteers like yourself the same question about challenges that they face, and many of their responses fit in the categories we just discussed. One important item to reinforce is that each of us has our own responses to certain environments. Different places may be designed specifically with this in mind. Close your eyes and imagine you are in a crowded elevator. How do you feel? What are you doing? Where are you standing or looking? Is your phone out? Perhaps some funny memories come up or even some uncomfortable feelings during this thought exercise. Sometimes when I do this, I get the confident people, those that would not change their behavior and would still talk on their cell phone as if no one was there. Or perhaps even begin a conversation with others in the crowd, not really caring if others hear. Maybe confident is not the correct descriptive word for these individuals. Others think of a very different experience, like this individual on the right. It may be because she did not get the memo about Dark Suit Day, but more realistically, it is a response to the number of people in that space. Behaviors of that individual might include avoiding eye contact, looking at the phone, or talking silently. In short, it's the same physical space and social environment, but two unique and different responses and behaviors. Let's do one more example, not physical space related, but rather our social environment. Close your eyes again and think of the word gang. What comes to mind? According to the Merriam-Webster's definition, a gang is a group of persons working to unlawful or antisocial ends, especially a band of antisocial adolescents. Is that what many of us thought? Did we think of more nefarious characters causing trouble? So there is a second meaning of the word that describes a gang as a group of persons having informal and usually close social relations. Surely you would not describe the Arrowhead Gang with some of the same descriptors as when you first heard the word. Now, both examples help reinforce a crucial point, and that is about perception. Some people watching this module may have felt different than others. We must recognize that even if an environment that feels comfortable to you may not for others. Keep that in mind as we go through the rest of the session. So, to wrap up this section, there are some key principles that are found in environments that support physical activity. While these are defined separately for convenience, our efforts should attempt to address each of these principles. Our environment should and must be useful, safe, comfortable, and interesting. This next section is intended to provide you with resources and terminology to help build your vocabulary and share specific guides and tools that are available to use as a community member and as a volunteer. There are 4 unique domains or opportunities to engage in activities related to active living, which include recreation, transportation, occupation or school, and household. Worksites have guides that focus on policies and environmental changes that are best practice strategies for those sites. While some, like the Resident's Guide for Creating Safer Communities for Walking and Biking, include strategies specifically for community members like yourself to advocate for change. Some of you listening may be aware of this, but on November 12, 2018, the second edition of the Physical Activity Guidelines for Americans were released to the public. This was the first update since the release of the guidelines in 2008. Released the same day was the Move Your Way promotional campaign materials to help people live healthier lives through increased physical activity. The link to the website is listed on this slide, and I encourage you to visit and review the available tools and resources to learn about the updated physical activity guidelines and the materials that could help you promote key messages with your audiences. The materials they have on the website are also available in Spanish and English. These materials would be great to distribute in a weekly newsletter. One of the first ways to create a culture of wellness is for us to live by that example and try to do it within our own environments and situations. We can use and learn from these experiences to relate and help others who may face similar challenges as we do. I am a planner by education, so scheduling and having an action plan is imperative to my personal and professional life, especially when family, travel, and other time commitments arise. Live by the motto of more activity is better, and any is better than none. And choose activities that make you happy and that you enjoy. There is not a one-size-fits-all prescription for this, but we need to be confident in our abilities of the activities we choose and have supportive environments to maximize our chance of success. For me, that is often getting as many steps during the workday as I can. What are those work times that you might be able to schedule in some movement? Boring webinar? Present company not included, of course. Try standing, doing stretches, or pacing. If you are volunteering with a location or work site, there may be formal policies in place, or that could be implemented, to help build in active moments throughout the day. The guides referenced earlier can help you identify these policies as examples. Perhaps scheduling is a little easier said than done. We need to be aware of what's available to us and where there are places to be active, particularly safe environments that we feel comfortable engaging in. These are opportunities to increase the knowledge and awareness of existing environments. Motivational and education programs that enhance and help change the perception of existing places may encourage the use of those environments. There is safety in numbers and a sense of accountability when others are supporting one another with healthy living goals. Events can help encourage and celebrate the joys of being active. We, as volunteers, can use these events to highlight the benefits of activity, connect with people, and showcase community support for some of the work that you are doing. Also, keeping track of progress, like self-monitoring mileage or distances, provides feedback, value, and consistency. There are some tools to help us with scheduling and engaging in activity. Walking maps and brochures, along with signage, can encourage us to explore unfamiliar places. What is the difference between a walking map and a route? Walking maps tend to be more formal and supplied through educational materials like printouts or brochures. Walking routes can be as simple as determining a planned route and going. For example, this past week I did a progressive meal where we decided a route to have an appetizer, an entree, and finish with a dessert, all at different locations within walking distance of each other. There are also national and state level challenges that can be leveraged to encourage friendly competition. One Texas specific example is the Walk Across Texas program. This picture highlights our local Walk Across Texas kickoff event. For over 20 years, friends, family, co-workers, and even furry friends have joined together to engage in a physical activity program offered by Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. The program goal is simple: create and join a team with the goal of walking 832 miles, which is the distance across Texas as the crow flies. Visit walkacrosstexas.tamu.edu to learn more, or feel free to reach out to me with other recommendations. This program is online and offered for free, but like the picture shows, often local counties and communities host events. I will share some other case study examples shortly. Finally, we might be able to change the infrastructure of our environments to create areas supportive of activity, but not just for fitness enthusiasts. Now, I say change the infrastructure loosely in that there are low-cost options that may help jumpstart your efforts, while still using best practices to encourage activity. This is where items overlap with the previous slide, as we are revisiting walking routes and mileage markers. Also, we can educate pedestrians on nearby locations, whether it be the library or the restrooms. Existing buildings already have some great infrastructure to incorporate minor changes. Physical changes to the built environment may be used to help pedestrian safety, address accessibility issues, and improve the overall comfort of your community. One item I do have to mention is that you must always consider safety. It will be important for your team to learn and review the safety standards to a site, facility, school, etc. We must also suggest adherence to guidelines set forth by local, state, and national code requirements if we are ever designing or leading changes to physical spaces or incorporating activities. Now, let's look at some examples of those who took on these ideas and concepts. They are truly creating the culture in their communities. The first example is a stroll through Rockport. This was a walking event offering a 2 or 4 mile walk to various historic buildings and homes in the central and downtown parts of Rockport, a city on the coast of Texas. Community members participated in a self-guided walk and were provided with maps and an optional scavenger hunt, as well as tote bags. As they followed the mapped route, participants were met by docents in historical costume who provided education about the building or home. Participants who completed the scavenger hunt and enhanced their knowledge about their community's history were engaged in a drawing. How fun! Another example that I really enjoy as a case study is an adaptation of a well-known process, but specific to the community's local capacity. Play streets are commonly seen in urban environments where streets are temporarily closed to cars to enable activities in those spaces. This case study is from a rural community in Milam County in Texas. They decided instead of shutting down a street, they would have an open street or event in partnership with a local school. A great example of the famous Theodore Roosevelt quote, "Do what you can with what you have, where you are." This slide shows a volunteer and extension organized event that led into their Walk Across Texas challenge. It was a colorful afternoon that included over 100 pounds of powder. They utilized a space that was not well known to the community members as a place to be active. It's known as the band practice field, and they mapped out a half-mile path. The energy, excitement, and music were enough to draw out neighborhood citizens to see what was happening. Two contrasting but topic-related case studies are shown on this slide. The left side is a picture of a local Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America group at a local high school. Members from the art club helped provide their support as well. This crosswalk connected their high school to a nearby community college where they had dual credit opportunities. While a four-way intersection with stop signs are there, often pedestrians reported not feeling safe, visible, or comfortable. They partnered with the city's Public Works Department to shut down the road and repaint the crosswalk, incorporating some Panther pride in the design. The temporary crosswalk design on the right connected a community garden to a nonprofit community center dedicated to serving and providing education to community residents. The hand and vegetable washing stations were on the opposite side of the garden, with many trips back and forth across the street. There is a stop sign a bit further down, but in this section there was quite a bit of through traffic. The design slowed cars down temporarily and could serve as a catalyst for future, more formal interventions. The final case study I wanted to share is from a recent trip that I took to Bryce Canyon National Park in Utah. Since this is a webinar, I wanted to also put a face to the name. Yes, that is me. So I think this was a program designed for kids, but there was no age limit on the website that described it. So I thought, what the heck, let's give it a go. The idea was to explore the park and take a picture confirming you found dedicated plaques along the hiking trail. I am not hip and not throwing up a peace sign. That is the second sign that I found. Once complete, you show the pictures to the visitor center and you get a sticker. We have just finished a pilot of this scavenger hunt style program in a small Central Texas community. Over the month of June, the local extension agent wanted people to explore their beautiful city. Locations were recruited and partners were identified from local businesses, chambers, parks, etc. Participants were able to check in using QR codes or snap a picture with the locations using a dedicated hashtag. We are still gathering the amount of people that contributed, but it was a large success and we hope to replicate it in other communities across Texas soon. So let's do our final thought exercise for this webinar. Now that we have learned potential strategies to create a culture of wellness and highlighted case study examples of people implementing related programs or policies, where do you think you have opportunities in your community? In the Slide 31 action task box, write down thoughts that would help you and your community members be more active and live a healthy lifestyle. Let's take about 30 seconds again to come up with some suggestions. Hope you came up with some great ideas, and I would love to see these opportunities blossom with your volunteer work. Feel free to connect with me to share as well. Revisiting the group of volunteers' thoughts from before, you might see some common themes for what you wrote down. Education was the primary opportunity, which typically comes up a lot. It is a great role for volunteers and often described in city and community plans for creating cultures of wellness. In fact, here's a quote from a community health needs assessment that I recently read in preparation for a community planning session. Interviewees, and I quote, raised concern over high rates of obesity, diabetes, heart failure, they believe to be exacerbated due to the lack of education within the community about availability of resources and programs, especially youth. So, to engage community members with education, the volunteers felt there was opportunity to educate using social media and presentations. Youth was highlighted as a target audience, and they wanted to use tools like maps, events, campaigns, and more. Some other ideas related to safety included safety patrols, neighborhood watches, and crossing guards to help deter unsafe behavior and encouraging positive activities. Laid out on this slide is the planning process for community design. This is a little nerdy, so bear with me, but essentially there are three main priorities. First is to assess the problem or the issue. Second is to plan what you would like to be accomplished, heavily based on your network and partners. And finally, the most recognizable, the implementation of your plan. This process can be applied from the smallest intervention to something more sustainable and long-term. So you may be asking, is this what I signed up for? And it may not be, and that's okay. There are many ways to create a culture of wellness, and you play a critical role in the community. By having conversations on these topics and providing some evidence-based strategies, we can work together to promote physical activity while creating a more supportive and active environment. In my experience, most communities want to create more active environments and want their constituents to be more active. However, this must fit within the focus and context of the area. Also, many may lack the technical knowledge to make desired improvements. Budget is always a common concern as well, along with staffing, maintenance, and safety concerns. When I work in communities, I am often reminded that many hands make light work. In very rare cases can an issue that is identified be resolved quickly. Or, if something can be resolved quickly, perhaps there is another option to build off of that. For example, let's say it is not easy to cross a certain street, or perhaps we see people crossing unsafely at one area in town. Living in a college town, I see this almost every day. Something that can be done immediately would be an education program about safe crossing, while a long-term goal may be pushing for crosswalks, signals, curb extensions, etc. There are partners that can help influence community change. One of the easiest ways to engage people and raise awareness may be to find those with similar concerns and build support for your efforts. Once there is an engaged group to help support and some ideas or strategies are talked about, then you could begin the process of identifying approaches to make change. These include events, campaigns, programs, infrastructure, assessments, and are critically dependent on your community's assets and ability to determine what, who, by when, and what resources will be able to help provide support following the planning process that we discussed earlier. The groups listed on this slide tend to be great supporters, but remember, some of these groups may have other goals in mind outside of health. Just one example would be the art community, such as local artist or performance groups. The art community could also overlap with a school-based group, like an art club. These creative folks could apply their skill set to help with street or sidewalk murals, or to liven up local events. As you transition into the role of a Master Health Volunteer, I once again encourage you to find your why. Find that something that you are passionate about and want to contribute towards. Be a resource of information and support programs. Advocate for others who may not be able to have their voices heard, and be an example for yourself and others. I hope you feel this webinar provided you with the tools necessary to achieve the high standards of a Master Health Volunteer. My contact information was listed on the first slide, and I would be happy to connect with anyone who would like additional information or answer any questions that you may have now or once you begin your volunteer work. I will leave you with one final thought, and that is the public is aware of the health benefits of being active. The key is to motivate people to fit it into their busy lives by creating a culture of wellness. We can lead that charge. Thank you to the Well-Connected Community's effort for their opportunity to share this information with you, and I hope you found it to be relevant and meaningful to your future work. Each of you have a unique skill set and interest, and I hope this conversation sparked a passion and got you excited about potential opportunities for your volunteer service. I thank you for your attention and wish you the best of luck.